Katanaut is Dead Cells meets Dead Space. I don't mean this to be reductive, it's just that Katanaut wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and honestly, it's better for it. In fact, Katanaut is one of the most exhilarating games I've played in quite some time. The hack and slash combat is fast, frantic, and incredibly challenging. The setting, a creepy space station filled with grotesque, once human monstrosities, adds tension to an already stressful roguelike experience. While not perfect, few games have kept me so consistently on the edge of my seat, and few victories produce the same levels of euphoria. What's even more impressive is that it's all created by a solo developer. Katanaut may be my biggest pleasant surprise of 2025, and is an absolute must-play for all action roguelike fans. In Katanaut, you play as a katana-wielding astronaut. Do you see how it gets its name now? Who has been tasked with exploring a space station that's gone silent after a distress call. It doesn't take long to see that the humans who once inhabited this station have been transformed into twisted cosmic horrors. Uncovering the mystery of its downfall requires navigating through several increasingly haunting environments and surviving the hordes of threatening monsters. Death is the likely outcome, but through advanced time manipulation, Knot will be brought back to life when his biometrics are no longer detected, giving you another attempt at conquering the station. I immediately connected the plot and locale to Dead Space. I wouldn't call it entirely derivative, but it isn't exactly original either. That being said, the environments are what make Katanaut immediately stand out. Developer Voidmaw manages to capture what makes Dead Space so haunting and brilliantly translates it into a 2D setting. The enemies are terrifying, lying in that uncanny valley of human-like yet distinctly monstrous. Vision is obscured under flickering lights. Hallways are long and winding, and a limited field of view allows monsters to surprise from off-screen. There are even moments where the music fades and movement stiffens as you step through a blown-out airlock into the void of space. The combination of fantastic pixel art and impressive lighting effects created a real sense that I was exploring a derelict space station whose horrors threaten me at every step. What really surprised me is that despite its fast-paced hack-and-slash combat, it delivered the feelings of a survival horror game. It produced the same sensations of unease, hesitation, and occasionally outright fear. I found myself slowly inching my way through levels, checking for enemies before entering a room. Countless times, a flickering light or spooky sound caused me to jump. It raised my heart rate and heightened the already intense emotions surrounding each moment of gameplay, from the despair of losing a run to the ecstasy of beating a boss. A good setting can definitely enhance an action game, but I've never experienced one that had such dramatic impact on how I felt while playing. And the action is certainly quality. Knot enters each run equipped with a katana and a firearm with limited ammo that can be refreshed with melee strikes. Knot can also dodge attacks by rolling and sliding, abilities I heavily relied on to avoid the onslaught of attacks thrown my way. The combat is fast-paced, but each swing of the blade feels weighty and impactful, especially when enemies are knocked back, revealing new splatters of blood along the wall. It's easy to get into a nice rhythm, firing a couple pistol rounds before closing in with the sword to refill ammo. Up to 2 skills, special abilities with a short cooldown that can be discovered and equipped during a run, are useful for rounding out your kit. When a build came together, it was incredibly thrilling to shoot and slash my way through the vast hordes of monsters. While I quite enjoyed the combat, that doesn't come without caveats. For one, there is a certain lack of fluidity. Some animations take longer than expected, and canceling out of them isn't always responsive. You also have to manage stamina, a bit of an odd choice for this style of gameplay. Far too often, I would be in the zone, slashing and dashing my way around, only to run out of stamina as I approached an enemy who would promptly punch me in the face. While this caused me to slow down, further adding to the survival horror feel, managing stamina often felt at odds with how Katanaut pushed me to play, especially in later difficulties that punish for progressing too slowly. The visuals, as awesome as they look, are incredibly noisy. There were often so many enemies on screen that I would lose track of who was attacking amidst the chaos. This was especially true in later difficulties when many more ranged enemies and attacks were introduced. I can't count the frustrating number of times I took damage without a clue as to how it happened. Recognizing attacks in the visual cacophony was something I improved at over time, but this heightened an already steep learning curve. Runs consist of 4 sections, each containing 2 biomes and a boss fight. Biomes require navigating labyrinthine halls filled with enemies in search of resources, stat and skill upgrades, and the door to the next level. Between biomes, you can cash in for new weapons, upgrades, and perks, as well as replenish your health and healing items. Discovering an exit presents an interesting risk versus reward dilemma. Do I retreat to safety and heal up, or do I risk further exploration for more upgrades that will pay off later? The structure will feel very familiar to Dead Cells fans, although Katanaut does not have a branching path. You'll see the same biomes and bosses each run, but this never felt overly repetitive. The incredible variety of ways to kit out your build is what keeps things fresh. Along your runs, you'll discover memory fragments. These unlock the ability to buy new guns, skills, and perks, permanently unlocking the ability to find them in future runs. There are over 50 of each, and many synergize together in unique and interesting ways. In some runs, I would lean heavily into buffing katana damage. Others, I would focus on my firearm, upgrading ammo capacity and kinetic damage while using a skill that provided a full reload. I definitely had my favorites, but I found most skills viable and the balance to be solid. When a build comes together, the visceral combat and intense atmosphere create an exhilarating experience that rivals the best action roguelikes. However, getting a run off the ground is way easier said than done. Katanaut is brutally difficult, especially in the early stages. You only have a few hit points and limited healing, and clearing groups of enemies can be challenging before you've found enough upgrades. Even after investing in permanent upgrades to health and stamina, the vast majority of my runs ended before the second boss. If I could cross that barrier, then usually I was strong enough to snowball that into better and better improvements that outpaced the trials of the final levels, further highlighted by my perfect record against the final boss. This isn't unusual, I felt the same way about Dead Cells, but I wish the difficulty curve was flatter. I worry that the barrier to entry is so high that many who try Katanaut will miss out on what makes it special. That being said, I navigated the learning curve and achieved a rewarding first victory in about 5 hours. This led me to the introduction of Katanaut's endgame difficulties. Rather than incremental challenge increases, like the Hades Heat system or Slay the Spire's Ascension levels, Katanaut takes a more radical approach, dramatically changing key elements of the run to increase the difficulty steeply. Stepping up to Warp 1 was jarring to say the least. Enemies no longer flinched on impact. Healing was harder to come by. New monsters flooded the halls of the station in increased numbers. It almost felt as if I was starting from scratch, once again struggling to make it out of the first areas. I have mixed feelings on this approach. In the first handful of runs on Warp 1, it was like I was playing a whole new game. Previous strategies I relied on were no longer viable. I needed to be more discerning about when to fight, but this limited the potential for great rewards. It was frustrating to feel like I had developed an understanding of Katanaut just to have that all thrown out the window. However, I started to learn again, developing new skills and taking runs farther, and the same satisfying loop started to materialize. This also allowed me to see a slew of new story moments and mechanics exclusive to Warp 1, which was invigorating. These impactful changes and narrative moments made me appreciate the Warp levels as a core piece of experiencing Katanaut, rather than a simple optional endgame challenge. It took me as long to achieve victory on Warp 1 as it did on the base difficulty, but it was even more rewarding, and further cemented my appreciation for Katanaut. The difficulty ramp doesn't stop there. As of recording this, I've played for 14 hours and have not completed the final challenge, Warp 3. Honestly, it feels like I may never have the chops to finish it. Still, I'll keep playing because I continue to have so much fun trying new skills, experimenting with new weapons, and exploring the terrifying depths of this space station. I'm incredibly impressed by how much Katanaut has to offer, especially for a solo developer project. It's an easy tagline to call it Dead Cells meets Dead Space, but it's so much more than that. Katanaut is a fantastic action roguelike that elegantly uses cosmic horror to intensify combat and amplify the emotions I felt while playing. I hope it gets attention amidst a crowded September. It definitely deserves it. Thank you for watching. I'm a partnered creator with Minimap. who is kind enough to provide me with the code for this review. Minimap is the ultimate gaming app. It allows you to track all of your games and achievements in one place thanks to its Game Sync feature that works with PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo, and Steam. You can also share updates and reviews with a small but passionate and growing community. I'm a data nerd, so I love everything Minimap allows me to track, like what systems I own a game on and total hours played. And I've discovered so many great games through reading community posts and reviews. This isn't a paid advertisement. I just really like the Minimap app and community and want to see it grow. So if you are interested, check out the link in the description. And to see more of my game reviews, please subscribe. Okay, thank you, bye!